AMISOM denies involvement in the arrest of ex-Al-Shabaab leader as protests continue in Somalia. The U.S. orders non-emergency staff out of Congo before the poll. And two former presidents of Madagascar hold campaigns in a hotly contested runoff election. Hello everyone, welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program, Africa's biggest dam in Ethiopia to be completed in 2022. And it's a losing start for African champions ES Tunis in the FIFA Club World Cup. We begin with the latest developments in Somalia, where the African Union peacekeeping mission says it had no part in the arrest of the former number 2 leader of the Al-Shabaab extremist group. In a statement released overnight, the African Union called for utmost restraint after several deaths were reported in the gunfire-fueled uproar around Mukhtar Robo's arrest on Thursday in Baidoa. Protesters took to the streets for a third day of demonstrations on Saturday, with angry supporters clashing with police. Officials say at least 11 people have been killed so far. Robo's arrest is seen as a high-profile test of Somalia's treatment of defectors from the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab. Somalia's government welcomed the defection last year by Al-Shabaab's former spokesperson, but not his candidacy to lead the southwestern state, which took some officials by surprise.
Mukhtar Robo is the right choice for presidency in Southwest State. The federal parliament speaker has so far shown bravery by standing with his people in Baidoa. When the people of Baidoa protested in support of the federal president, no one was arrested. Today, if the government is arresting people for supporting their candidate, in future they will regret.
Now, since the protests broke out on Thursday, there have been speculation over the involvement of Ethiopian troops in Mukhtar Robo's arrest. However, according to CGTN's Girum Chala, the Ethiopian government denies any involvement of its troops.
We have heard from the news as Ethiopian authorities are also saying that Ethiopian troops have involved in the capture arrest of Mukhtar Robo. But some authorities that we spoke to at the Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs say that the Ethiopian troops have not involved themselves in this arrest. The former Al-Shabaab commander might be maneuvering around Baidoa, where the Ethiopian sector, the western part of Baidoa sector, was controlled by, or is controlled by Ethiopian troops. But Ethiopia, they say, the authorities are saying that Ethiopia is following a different approach when it comes to its relationship with Mogadishu. Since the coming of Abiy Ahmed into power, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Ethiopia is following the non-interference kind of policy towards Somalia. So all in all, the understanding that we have from Ethiopian authorities is Ethiopian troops have not involved themselves in the arrest of the former commander of Al-Shabaab.
And we are receiving reports that Mukhtar Robo is due to address a press conference a little later on today, the first time since his arrest. Again, those reports yet to be confirmed, but we do understand that Mukhtar Robo is due to address a press conference later today. Well, let's discuss this further now. I'm joined by Ali Hussein Sahal. He's a political analyst. He's joining me live from Mogadishu. Thank you for joining me on Africa Live, Ali Hussein. Let's first start with AMISOM's situation here. It has distanced itself from the arrest of Mukhtar Robo, yet sentiments on the ground are saying the contrary. Can you give us an update on the situation there and perhaps what this means for AMISOM operations in the country?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me in your program. As you have put it, AMISOM has actually distanced itself from arresting Mukhtar Robo, but what actually is the problem, and the people on ground are actually sticking to the belief that AMISOM has arrested their candidate. Mukhtar Robo was of late a candidate that was hugely supported in Baidoa, Southwest, where he was running for president. The thing is, AMISOM was actually quite late, and it's not the first time that AMISOM issues or responds to an allegation very late. It has taken 3 days for AMISOM to respond when people have already believed in the fact that the fact that it's AMISOM, it's the Ethiopian contingent in Baidoa under the banner of AMISOM, that have arrested Mukhtar Robo from the presidential palace in Baidoa. Earlier on that particular day when Robo was arrested, reports have emerged that from local media have reported that Mukhtar Robo was arrested by the Ethiopian troops in Baidoa. So AMISOM did not quickly respond to.
And we have lost that signal to Mogadishu. We will return to that signal there if and when we can. Let's still stay in Somalia for the moment. And the latest U.S. airstrike in the country has killed at least 8 Al-Shabaab militants. According to the U.S. Africa Command, no civilians were involved in the airstrike near Gandarse, a coastal area south of Mogadishu. The military has said the strike was conducted in close partnership with the Somalia government in combined counter-terrorism efforts. To date, the U.S. military has conducted at least 40 airstrikes against Al-Shabaab in various parts of the country. At least 21 people have been killed and dozens others wounded in 2 days of fighting between ethnic groups in southern Ethiopia. The state-affiliated Fana Radio is reporting that the violence broke out near the town of Moyale, which is on the border with Kenya. The region is claimed by both the Oromo and the Somali ethnic group. Thousands of people have been displaced by the fighting in the area as there has been regular intercommunal violence. The United States has ordered non-emergency government employees and family members to leave the Democratic Republic of Congo ahead of crucial elections in the country. A new advisory urges Americans not to travel to eastern DRC and the Kasai provinces due to fears of conflict. The DRC holds its long-delayed presidential election on December the 23rd. Campaigning had been mostly peaceful until this week, when security forces opened fire to disperse opposition gatherings, killing at least 4 people. Then, in another incident, thousands of voting machines were destroyed in a fire in the capital, Kinshasa. And staying in the DRC, thousands of its citizens live in Congo-Brazzaville. As the December 23rd elections near, many are watching to see if their country will be safe to return to.
Jean Bienvenu is a former associate of opposition politician Jean-Pierre Bemba. In 2008, he had to leave his hometown of Kinshasa, fleeing state persecution. He is now among some 15,000 citizens of the Democratic Republic of Congo, now living across the border in Congo-Brazzaville.
It's very tough seeing what's happening in Kinshasa, but not being able to go back. It's not easy.
According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, nearly 750,000 Congolese have fled the various conflicts in their home country. So far, Uganda has taken in the most Congolese refugees, with many living in harsh conditions in camps surrounding Lake Albert. Jerome has lived here since the age of 9. He is not optimistic about the likelihood of change in his country of origin.
Why would I go back to the Congo? I just have to come back here again because of the war.
Some refugees have put down roots in their host country, like here in the Zambian capital of Lusaka. Bernard Pierre-Marie Lukungu has lived here since 1993, and he also has his worries about the election back in the DRC.
We are almost 25,000. And if truly things will go, haywire, we're afraid many will enter Zambia. And then it is a situation that we don't want to happen, because this will destabilize this country. We don't want that.
They hope that the upcoming election will bring change that will allow their lives to return to normal. If not, many may choose to join the large community of citizens who have sought to live their lives elsewhere. Asatal, CGTN.
To Madagascar now, where the runoff vote for the presidential election is due on December the 19th. 2 former presidents of the island nation, Andy Rajoelina and Marc Ravalomanana, will face each other in the poll. Neither candidate won the 50% of votes required for a first-round victory on November the 7th. CGTN's Tulisha Balala has more.
The Malagasy are once again preparing to head to the ballot to choose the man to lead their island nation. According to the final results released by the Constitutional Court last month, Andre Rajoelina won 39.23% of the votes, while Marc Ravalomanana garnered 35.35%. The rivals will face each other at the ballot box for the first time. Both say they want to make a difference in the lives of their people.
If the uniforms are the same, the children will be able to study well. That is why I have decided to make the same models. I know they are your children, but they're also my children. I will love them like my own daughter.
The projects we have for Mahajanga, I'm telling you, we will really carry them out. It's a modern project which will deliver jobs for young people and help women and farmers. I will bring light next year. I am going to have a new solar power station constructed in Mahajanga to reduce the cost of electricity.
Both Ravalomanana and Rajoelina were banned from running in the last election in 2013. The country was under international pressure to avoid a repeat of deadly political violence that engulfed the island in 2009. Judges at the country's constitutional court have cautioned the two hopefuls to avoid provocation as they head to the final stretch of the election. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
To another election now, and Algeria's opposition party says it supports the postponement of the upcoming presidential elections. The opposition says the presidential elections are not a solution to the country's political crisis. Rather, the only solution is to involve Algerians in an initiative to achieve a national consensus.
We agree with the idea of postponing the presidential elections, provided that the period of deferral does not exceed the limits of the year. We must have discussion and consensus if to achieve real reforms.
The United Nations has struck a deal on the Yemen war after talks in Geneva and Stockholm. The Houthis, accused of trying to take over power by force, have agreed to a ceasefire, a withdrawal from major strongholds such as Hodeida city, and to renegotiate a peace process. Yasser Hakim with the details on Egypt's reaction and what's next for the Arab military coalition in Yemen.
The Egyptian Foreign Ministry had welcomed the agreement in Yemen and the proposed peace deal between the warring sides. Cairo is a member of the Saudi-led Arab military coalition in Yemen. The Egyptian Navy is deployed in the Red Sea to protect the trading vessels and straits from the Houthi piracy.
Egypt supports President Mansour al-Hadi's government, and it also supports any step that keeps Yemen united and avoid more bloodshed. Therefore, it backs any deal that is approved by the Gulf states and international community.
The Yemeni war has cost thousands of lives and a human catastrophe. It's also a financial and political burden on the warring sides. The Saudi monarchy is supporting the proposed peace deal reached in Stockholm. But is it going to last?
The Arab coalition entered Yemen 3 years ago to force the Houthis to sit on the negotiation table, and this is what has been achieved by the latest deal. Saudis, Emirates and Egypt are waiting to see if the Houthis are serious about peace, so it's too early for the coalition to withdraw.
There are still several outstanding issues that need to be resolved. Dissolving the Houthis and their weapons into the national army is one. The second is where the oil revenue will be channeled, to the central bank or divided between the Houthis and the government.
The UN is working hard to try and keep this fragile peace intact, and there are meetings underway in Yemen between the differing factions, hoping to ensure a smooth transition process. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. Yellow vest protesters turn out for the fifth weekend in France. And Egypt unveils one-of-a-kind ancient tomb.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's bring you developments from France, where the Yellow Vest protesters have once again turned out to demonstrate in Paris, but in much smaller numbers than on the last few Saturdays. The combination of concessions announced by President Emmanuel Macron, protest fatigue and cold weather have taken much of the energy out of the movement. A few dozen demonstrators were arrested and police did use tear gas. There was a little of the violence seen in recent weeks. Elena Casas reports from Paris.
Police, government officials and the president had urged them not to march, saying that after 5 weeks of sometimes violent demonstrations, the Yellow Vests had made their point.
I think that the country needs calm now. It needs order. It needs to start functioning normally again.
Just a few thousand people defied that call to march in central Paris. Some threw projectiles at police, who responded with tear gas, but most were peaceful. Fewer protesters braved the cold on Saturday, but the weeks of demonstrations have put President Macron on notice. He had an ambitious list of reforms planned for the new year, many of which may not now see the light of day. The president was first forced into a U-turn on the fuel tax that triggered the protests, and then into significant concessions, including a rise in the minimum wage and cutting taxes on low-income pensioners.
I think the choices I've made respond to a legitimate anger, so we're helping people and speeding up tax cuts so that work pays better in this country.
For some Yellow Vests, the president's change in tone is already a victory, and a poll this week showed only half of the French still sympathise with the protests, compared to 2/3 a week ago. But others worry he won't stick to those promises.
This fifth weekend is to insist that the measures announced are applied, because I think they'll increase the deficit and Macron might try to do another U-turn.
Others are determined to keep marching, saying they want deeper political change, including putting government policies to the people in frequent referendums and cutting politicians' wages. The Yellow Vests movement seems to be losing steam as France winds down for the Christmas holiday, but it could be a long winter for President Macron, who goes into the new year with his authority weakened and his policy agenda in doubt.
Administration. Trump tweeted that his Interior Secretary, Ryan Zinke, will step down by the end of this year. Zinke is reportedly under investigation by the Department of Justice for using his position for personal gain. He headed an Interior Department that has received wide criticism over policies that expanded oil and gas drilling on public land. Regional security experts and political organ representatives are gathered in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, for the East African Standby Force Conference. Issues such as cross-border migration, terrorism and human trafficking are high on the agenda.
The East African Standby Force is comprised of 10 countries and seeks to provide security in the Horn of Africa region. The political wing of the body gathered in Khartoum to discuss a myriad of issues, including human trafficking and terrorism. While the region still faces challenges from groups like Al-Shabaab, it has made great strides, with member countries such as Ethiopia making huge improvements in the past year.
Remarkable achievements have been made. We should therefore seize the opportunity to further exchange views and discuss how best to consolidate the progress achieved so far, noting that the path towards lasting peace and stability requires a long-term investment.
As well as discussing regional stability, the leaders also discussed international issues.
I will not forget to remind the experts that they should take international variables into account, especially with regard to material and technical support. I hope the experts will work on the recommendations that will help the organization sustain itself.
The EASF is one of 5 regional defense forces in Africa. The Khartoum conference is set to last until the 17th of December. Astatal, CGTN.
South Africa is about to unveil a new improved HIV drug treatment program. The Department of Health will announce the winner of the drug tender later this month. This will lead to the manufacture and distribution of a new fixed-dose pill that has less side effects for people living with the disease. The new medication will not only be more effective for patients, it will also save the government in the region of $900 million.
6 companies, including Aspen, Africa's largest pharmaceuticals manufacturer, have registered and submitted tenders to make dolutegravir. Not only will the new drug be cheaper, but government says the fixed-dose combination will be a breakthrough for the fight against HIV.
We've also been able to, working with the World Health Organization, UNAIDS, UNITAID, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, and others, to reduce the cost of this combination to no more than $75 per patient per year. Now, in the tender, which we've not released the results, would have set the $75 as a ceiling price, so we will see how much lower the suppliers, of which we have 6 registered in the country, will be able to offer this new fixed-dose combination to us for.
An estimated 7.8 million people in South Africa are living with HIV and AIDS. The government spends $570 million annually on treatment.
South Africa already has the largest HIV treatment program in the world. 4.5 million people in South Africa access antiretrovirals for free at all public health facilities. Once this new drug comes online, the department will be able to save money and expand on that program.
In 2004, government was paying $1,600 for my 28 pills per month per patient. Through our negotiations and also pressure of activism, today they are treating me with 112 rand. Per 28 pills per month. So because of we have engaged the minister with regards to buying generic version of the original drugs through the BRICS countries, government is not losing any money now.
Although the drug has received the go-ahead from most global health organizations, an observational study conducted in Botswana in 2016 found that dolutegravir was safe for use for HIV-positive men and children, but not for pregnant women. Only 4 out of over 400 women sampled showed adverse reactions. The Treatment Action Campaign believes other factors could have contributed to the findings and that this is still a massive breakthrough for people living with HIV.
There are 2 issues of concern. Many women were put on dolutegravir before pregnancy, and the result shows none of the deformities of those kids. Those who were already on DTG and fall pregnant, those are the 4 people that we can talk about, and we need to know what happened in between taking off the DTG and what is the culture background of these women, and was the setting for this study, user-friendly for these women, because if it's an observational study, it means it was only observing. You take a drug, you drink, and you go home.
The Department of Health will announce the winner of the new HIV drug tender by month end. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Tunisian civil society organizations have called on the state and lawmakers to reinforce the control of migration policies and limit forced repatriation. They also consist in revising the legal text related to the migratory issue, as well as the conventions signed in this regard between Tunisia and the European Union. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi has more.
On the occasion of the International Migrants' Day, the Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights, FTDES, has revealed that some 13,546 Tunisian migrants reached the Italian coasts between 2015 and 2018. Moreover, 5 out of 42 migrants reaching the Italian coasts have died in the same period.
A report conducted recently by the forum also reveals that this number is rising year after year since it had been limited to 569 migrants in 2015 against 6,006 migrants in 2018 from January to the end of November 2018.
Romvani pointed out that there are today more unaccompanied migrant minors, 1,028, compared to 120 accompanied minors and 138 women.
The Coast Guards had managed to thwart 13,158 irregular migration attempts since 2015 until December 10, 2018. However, more minors and women are leaving their countries illegally. This is an alarming phenomenon.
Researchers noted that the North African state ranks first in forced returnees, with a rate of 95% in 2017. In addition, Tunisian authorities actively adhere to the European policies of irregular migration repatriation and do not oppose it, in spite of their illegal nature.
Tunisia is in the lead as regards the number of migrants detained in Italian detention centers, with 6,151 migrants, standing at 89% of the total number of migrants arrested in 2017. Tunisia does not have a policy of reintegration of repatriated migrants. Its role is limited to the application of judicial procedures.
Civil society activists have urged the Tunisian state to ratify the International Convention on the protection of the rights of migrants workers and their families. The Forum for Social and Economic Rights has called on the government and parliament to revise the legal text related to the migratory issue in Tunis.
Egypt has unveiled its newest pharaonic discovery, a 4,400-year-old tomb that belongs to top ancient Egyptian priest. It has remained unlooted and untouched, which is a rare Egyptian archaeological finding. Here's Adel Mahroui with more.
Layers of earth stand above it as a testimony for its age. Nearly 20 meters underground, Egyptian archaeologists made a new discovery: the tomb of Wahti. With 44 niches and 55 statues, the discovery shows the high status of Wahti.
It's a private tomb. It's exceptionally well preserved and colored, with sculptures inside. It belongs to a high official or a priest who worked during the 5th dynasty, during the king Neferir Kari, the 3rd king of the 5th dynasty, exactly the middle of the 25th century BC.
That makes the tomb's estimated age to be around 4,400 years old. It's rare to find a pharaonic tomb unlooted after all these millennia.
It's one of its kind in the last decades. We are very proud that this discovery done by Egyptian hands, by Egyptian mission, who they are working here in Saqqara.
Decorated with ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic characters, Wahti appears everywhere in the tomb with his wife, mother, and other relatives. Priests were very powerful in ancient Egypt, when divine connections were very important for the status of kings. The landmark finding is believed to be just the beginning for a bigger discovery. The sarcophagus and Wahti's belongings are yet to be found.
When we took the last layer of debris, we found 5 shafts. That's why it explains a lot. Why didn't we find any objects of Wahti? Wahti, the divine inspector, Wahti who got the titles, very important titles, for a very important man. So we believe that the work will be continue with revealing those 5 shafts, and we're gonna continue our digging to the west side, and we believe that we're gonna find more tombs in this area.
All of these new chambers were also sealed. Egyptian archaeologists will continue excavations this month, hoping to learn more of ancient Egypt's secrets. This tomb is one of several discoveries made this year at the Saqqara necropolis, which served Memphis, the capital of ancient Egypt, for 2,000 years. In the area, Djoser Pyramid still stands. It's the oldest grand stone structure known to mankind. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
And let's recap those headlines for you this hour. The African Union peacekeeping mission in Somalia says it had no part in the arrest of the former number 2 leader of the Al-Shabaab extremist group. In a statement released overnight, the African Union called for utmost restraint after several deaths were reported in the gunfire-fueled uproar around Mukhtar Robo's arrest on Thursday in Baidoa. Protesters took to the streets for a third day of demonstrations on Saturday. Officials say at least 11 people have been killed so far. At least 21 people have been killed and dozens others wounded in 2 days of fighting between ethnic groups in southern Ethiopia. The state-affiliated Fana Radio is reporting that the violence broke out near the town of Mayale, which is on the border with Kenya. The region is claimed by both the Oromo and the Somali ethnic group. The United States has ordered non-emergency government employees and family members to leave the Democratic Republic of Congo ahead of crucial elections next week. A new advisory urges Americans not to travel to eastern DRC and the Kasai provinces due to fears of conflict. The DRC holds its long-delayed presidential election on December the 23rd. And another high-profile resignation from U.S. President Donald Trump's administration. Donald Trump tweeted that his Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke will step down by the end of the year. Zinke is reportedly under investigation by the Department of Justice for using his position for personal gain. He headed an Interior Department that has received wide criticism over policies that expanded oil and gas drilling on public lands. And that's a look at your headlines. Let's now turn our attention to matters business. Here's what's ahead. Africa's biggest dam in Ethiopia to be completed in 2022. And we take a look at how lack of demand is pushing the ancient Islamic art to extinction.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Some breaking news for you here. We are receiving reports of a blast in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Some sources say an improvised explosive device went off at Talhe Junction in the capital moments ago. Details are still sketchy, but we will bring you more details as soon as we get them. Again, we are receiving reports of a blast in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Sources are saying an improvised explosive device went off at Talhe Junction in the capital, Mogadishu, moments ago. Details are still sketchy. We are receiving those details, but we will bring you more as soon as we receive them. In Ethiopia, the country's controversial Nile River Dam will be completed in 2022. As CGTN's Girum Chala explains, the construction of the dam began in 2011 and is expected to be Africa's biggest hydroelectric dam.
According to Ethiopia's Ministry of Water, Irrigation and Energy, the delay in the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has occurred due to lack of sufficient initial studies to successfully undertake such a huge project. And because of that, Ethiopia has been losing at least $800 million every year. Ethiopian authorities have therefore said the dam will not be completed this year as it has been anticipated before. Rather, the new date of completion to what is to be Africa's #1 hydroelectric generating dam will be 2022. Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam is now handled by the state-owned Waterworks Construction Company remains at only 25%. The government has announced it will involve other foreign and experienced companies to complete the electromechanical works of the dam on time. So, it's official. Ethiopia's multi-billion-dollar Grand Renaissance Dam needs 4 more years to be completed. And upon completion, the dam will generate 6,450 megawatts of electricity. enough to provide power for local consumption and export it to neighboring nations like Sudan, South Sudan, Djibouti and Kenya. Grumtala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Nigeria's government has filed a fresh $1.1 billion lawsuit against the Royal Dutch Shell Company and Italian oil company Eni. The case filed in a London court is in connection with the controversial Malibu oil deal. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has more.
The suit follows an independent investigation in which Nigeria purportedly sold its most lucrative offshore oil fields to Shell and Eni. The investigators commissioned by Transparency International discovered the $1.3 billion Shell and Eni claimed to have paid for the oil fields were in fact a bribe. The money was not wired to a government account. Instead, it was wired to Malibu, a company linked to the then Petroleum Minister, Dan Etete. The investigators also claim Nigeria stands to lose $6 billion should the deal stand in its original form. Shell and Eni are already facing prosecution in Italy for bribery resulting from the transaction. But Transparency International investigations seem to have emboldened Nigeria to go for more.
What Nigeria is trying to do is to cut its losses. Of course, for a transaction that started from 1998 and we're still on it, a lot of money, even in terms of potential revenues, have been lost. And funds that have supposed to have come into the coffers of the government are believed to have gone into individual pockets. And so Nigeria is trying to see how much of that they can recover. And for all intents and purposes, if the judicial processes will allow that to be done, I think that is important. You want to claim back what you believe is yours, both in terms of what you have lost and perhaps by some form of cumulative damages in terms of interest.
Nigeria's government also wants to void the contract, so the oil fields in question would revert to government. Shell and Eni have denied any wrongdoing. They've dismissed the findings of Transparency International as false conclusions based on the misinterpretation of the contract documents. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
In Egypt, the intricate and ancient Islamic art of arabesque has been passed on throughout generations of local craftsmen, but a change in trend and the lack of demand is endangering the craft.
In some parts of Old Cairo, Egypt, the ancient art of arabesque is still practiced. With skill and experience, craftsmen such as Mohamed Diab work the wood to make lattice work patterns that give away the talent of their makers. A skill so uniquely preserved is now dying out due to modernization. Many craftsmen fear that their craft may soon be forgotten.
I have worked in the arabesque industry after my father, grandfather and great-grandfather. My great-grandfather, Hussein, was a woodshop teacher in El Mahia Pasha School during the era of Muhammad Ali. I inherited this profession from my grandfather and my father.
The objects created by the craftsmen include chairs, tables, chessboards, and perhaps most celebrated, the arabesque window or mashrabiya in Arabic. The mashrabiya is a traditional window of old Arabic homes, and while it's no longer widely used today, it can still be found on the outer facade of homes in Old Cairo. For Mohammed, consistently performing this work has been a struggle, with few customers remaining. The only people showing interest in his work are tourists.
You see, these crafts have existed 1,400 or 1,300 years ago, in the same shape. Foreigners come here and are amazed when they see it. And these mashabiyas were made for specific purposes, not simply for aesthetic purposes.
The task requires carefully taking measurements, carving wood and shaping it. Afterwards, the various pieces are fixed into place with a hammer to ensure that the pieces hold together.
It's all about using the mind. It's not difficult. It is mostly mental work. You organize your objects and your tools, and you organize them correctly. They all look alike, but there are measurements that you must follow, you see?
For now, craftsmen like Mohammed are fighting to keep their trade alive. But reminders of the skill of previous craftsmen remain ever present in Old Cairo, such as in the famous Bait al-Suhaimi Ottoman house, whose mashribayas serve as evidence that the woodwork was once popular in Egypt. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Burkina Faso welcomed a bid to restitute African cultural works.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
And let's head over to West Africa, where France recently pushed to repatriate African artworks that were looted during colonization. Burkina Faso, one of the countries affected, has welcomed the move. Take a look.
More than 1,000 Burkinabe artworks are said to be displayed in French heritage institutions. Burkinabe cultural actors now want these pieces returned to their country.
With the
research institutions in Burkina Faso, it will be a question of establishing the truth and also the condition in which these objects were left, so that we can determine the policy and strategy to be deployed to request for their return.
Burkinabe cultural officials say restitution of some of the artwork will help revive the country's culture, especially among young people.
We have well-trained museum professionals. We have teachers and researchers who are dedicated to revive the forgotten culture in our youth. So there is no need to worry. If the process is successful, everything will be done to ensure that the artifacts are received and displayed properly.
This man has been an antiques dealer for nearly 42 years. The issue of restitution of African cultural property is of deep concern for him.
I wish all world leaders were like President Macron. They should let every African country preserve their own culture. As Africans, we have an obligation to know more about other cultures, but we must also not uproot them by plundering them and purchasing them for millions. This will destabilize our traditions and customs.
According to Burkinabe researchers, in 2008, Burkina Faso retrieved nearly 33 hours of unpublished audio documents collected by French researchers since the 1930s. The country is hopeful that, following findings of the report, commissioned by the French president, all of Africa's art
to end unequal competition between locally made and imported textiles. The high cost of production makes traditional garments to be more expensive than imported ones, and this is threatening the local weaving industry.
Residents of Jalfa city are more often associated with al-kashabiyya. It is a traditional garment made from camel hair and wool, mostly worn during the cold winter season. Many Algerians, especially those in the flat grasslands and north of Algerian desert, treasure it during the cold weather. The use of kashabiyya has become ingrained in the daily life of the population, making it almost symbolic of the Algerian personality.
Kashabiyya is our identity from the old. The prices are different, but this craft is disappearing due to fierce competition, and most of our youth have given up.
The weaving of al-kashabiyya has gained national and international popularity because it's part of the wardrobe of many Algerian high officials. It is also one of the most precious gifts to welcome guests with. To ensure maximum profits, craftsmen weave the al-kashabiyya using traditional equipment.
Craft is costing a lot in terms of raw materials. However, many customers still pass by the shop daily.
Craftsmen believe more attention and support is needed to protect their products from unfair competition, be it from counterfeits or cheap imports.
I think it's necessary to keep up with the craftsmen and protect them. Because of fierce competition, the craft can be disrupted. It's necessary for the craftsman to master his work well in return, because he is the first protector of the competition.
Local artisans may have to choose between cutting down their production costs or lowering their profit margins if concerned authorities do not protect their businesses from unfair competition. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. It's a losing start for the African champions ES Tunis at the FIFA Club World Cup.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
And we begin with football, where the African club champions Esperance de Tunis have lost their opening match at the FIFA Club World Cup, falling 3-0 to the United Arab Emirates Al Ain. The United Arab Emirates Pro League champions were 2 goals up inside the opening 20 minutes. Mohamed Ahmed headed in Ryan Yaslam Mohamed's corner after just 2 minutes. Substitute Raheem Sterling nodded in City's third to round off a dominant display from the home side.
The team was able to draw in Stamford Bridge the last second in Anfield, and top side, experienced players, all the people in front, not just the 11 who starts, all of them. It was wow, it was something in our mind. So today we're going to suffer, and it was, because the game was not over until the end. But I have a fantastic players, human beings, and they make again an incredible effort to win the game, back in track, and 3 more points.
The Kenya Anti-Doping Agency has cautioned doping control officers and athlete support personnel against tampering with doping samples as it scales up the war against cheats in the sport. The organization's Chief Executive Officer Jasper Rugut has revealed to CGTN that his organization has received new possible cases of anti-doping rules violations that are currently being investigated. Here's CGTN's Sadiq Shaban with more.
The Kenyan athletics scene continues to put up a brave showing despite a difficult year for the country's top sport. But despite efforts to stamp out cheating, there could have been more cases being handled than previously reported.
Yeah, so